Welcome to the Truth and Fertility Podcast. Today, I am interviewing Dr. Kela Smith. She is the founder of the Hormone Puzzle Society and also has the Hormone Puzzle Podcast. Today, we're talking all about nutrition, which is honestly, it's a topic I've been diving deep into lately. Just with hearing so much about chemicals in our foods that we should probably start staying away from, and just what it means to eat organic, what it means to eat good and quality foods, good quality meats, and how that can really impact our health and specifically our fertility, right? I think we're hearing so much more too about gut health and just how our nutrition can be so impactful with healing our bodies. So again, today we are talking all about nutrition. I totally pick her brain about just how nutrition can affect our fertility, how it affects our egg health, how it decreases inflammation in our body when we are eating in a healthy way. So I hope that you find this information really valuable to you. And I think the biggest thing I took away from this as well is just with all of this, this is a loaded topic. It's a lot of information. And I think we can be tempted to just be like, everything in my pantry is bad. What am I doing? What am I supposed to do? I think really what I took away from this and what I'm going to start implementing is something she mentions: when you run out of something, just replace it with the better option. And that is, I think, what I am going to start doing. And I had a lot of epiphanies during this interview, as you will also hear too. So without further ado, here is my interview with Dr. Kela Smith. Welcome to the Truth and Fertility Podcast. My name is Haley and I am your host. I work at an OBGYN clinic where I teach women and couples how to chart their cycles so they can either achieve or avoid pregnancy and also to manage their fertility. I have a huge passion to teach women and couples about the beauty of their fertility and how the pill is never the answer to women's health. There's a lot of good and not so good information out there about fertility. And so my goal with this podcast is to help you sort out the truth from the weeds. I want to teach you how to chart your cycle and to reach your family planning goals while also maybe even possibly locating hormonal imbalances and to receive proper treatment. I want to help you get in the best hands that you can with the best doctors that you can to reach optimal reproductive health. So if you're ready to get on this journey with me to learn more about your reproductive system, how it was created and how it should be working, and the best medicine in order to make it work if it's not, then you are in the right place. Well, hi, Dr. Kela Smith. It's so good to see you again. I was just on your podcast, and now I'm very excited for you to be here on mine on the Truth and Fertility Podcast. So today, we are going to be talking a whole lot about nutrition. And as I mentioned before we started recording, I'm getting really into this topic. I'm super excited to dive in with you today about it. But before we get started, if you could just introduce yourself and the Hormone Puzzle Society, and then we'll get going with the questions.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Haley, for having me. I'm really excited to talk to your audience and to be here with you. And like you said, my name is Dr. Kela Smith, and I am a holistic and integrative fertility and hormones doctor. I practice natural medicine, and I'm the founder of the Hormone Puzzle Society, which is a virtual health clinic where we work with women and couples all over the world to identify the root cause of their issues, help them heal that root cause, and get pregnant, have balanced hormones, and optimal health. I also mentor future fertility experts at our educational institute where we train them and bring them into our fertility coaching program. So, and I've written a bunch of books and I've got a podcast of my own, and I've been in this space for a really long time. And I love helping women and couples get pregnant. So that's me.
Amazing. Well, thank you. Yeah. And fertility health is so important, but there's so many stories of women and couples that are really struggling with infertility. And there's a lot of good and not so good information out there about that. Right. So I'm really glad that you are in that space and working to help couples naturally get pregnant. That's amazing because it's really just healing their bodies, right? And
Sure.
helping it do what it's supposed to do. So talking about nutrition, this first question is going to be a loaded question, but I figure we can kind of like dive in from there. But just how, kind of just give a brief overview of how nutrition affects our fertility, specifically as women. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I love that we're starting here because I feel like people know this, but they don't. And nutrition is one of the most powerful things that you can do for your body, your fertility, and your overall health. When you eat food, whether it's good foods or bad foods, and we'll kind of get into what that looks like in a minute, but when you eat these foods, this is what's nourishing your entire body, your cells, your hormones, your even things like reducing inflammation and supporting things like egg quality and quantity. All of that is controlled with what you eat and the nutrition that you give your body. It's the fuel for your body, and so good nutrition is top priority when it comes to fertility and overall health.
Okay, so talking about how nutrition, good nutrition is really affects our overall health, but specifically fertility. Can you go into what specific nutrients play a vital role in making sure that we as women are as healthy as possible? Like, what are, when we talk about good nutrition, like, what does that actually mean? What are those nutrients that you were talking about that we need in our bodies?
Sure. So before I even get into the nutrients, I just want to say when I'm talking nutrition, I'm talking whole food, balanced nutrition with lots of variety. So whole foods, people always ask me, well, should I be keto? Should I be carnivore? Should I be this diet or that diet? And it's really more than just a specific diet. It's that you're eating real whole foods. That's the bottom line. So that would be foundational. If you are not doing that, which I think most of the people that I talk to nowadays are eating good whole foods. But if you're not, if you're somebody who eats a lot of packaged foods, you're eating, a lot of fast foods, a lot of restaurant foods, we really need to go back to the basics and look at just clean whole foods. Lots of vegetables, nuts and seeds, meats, fish, real food. So that's the first thing. But diving into specific nutrients for fertility, and these are in no specific order, but the first one I would look at is folate. Our body needs folate, not folic acid. This is vitamin B9. And what this does, it supports fetal development. It helps with helps lower inflammation. And it's really, a lot of people will have something called the MTHFR gene mutation where they can't take folic acid and turn it into folate. So I always recommend that my clients and patients have really high folate foods in their diet. This would be any greens. So think leafy greens, your spinach, kale, bok choy, all the green vegetables that you can add to your diet. That's going to be really important.
Sorry to interrupt really quick, but what is the difference between folate and folic acid?
So folic acid is a synthetic version that's created in a lab. And so in
Okay.
the 1950s, there was studies showing that there was a lot of neural tube defects happening in women. That means when the fetus's neural tube doesn't form correctly and it can cause a miscarriage, it can, cause the baby not to thrive. So they said, okay, well, let's create something because this is caused from folate deficiency, but because folate is a natural food, they said, how can we make this cheaper? So they created folic acid and fortified a lot
Got
of
it.
foods with it. And still today, it blows my mind why people are still using folic acid because one, it's synthetic, and two, 60% of the population can't turn it into the usable form, which is called methylation, and turn it into folate. So I recommend everybody just take a good methylated B vitamin that has folate in it, as well as eating a lot of folate rich foods. You want to do both. Yeah.
Okay, so if you were, because I know in the prenatal vitamins that I take on the back, I'm gonna have to check now if it says folate or folic acid. I'm not quite sure, but if it says folate, that's what you want. Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And if it's in a vitamin form, it'll say methylated folate and even 5-MTHF. That's like the methylated variety that you need in a prenatal. If your prenatal says folic acid, I'm sorry, ladies, I would throw it out because you're not
Okay.
using 60% of you are not using that folic acid. And so you can become deficient. It can cause you to have a miscarriage or even not be able to get pregnant because you're folate deficient.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really good to know. Okay,
I
I'm gonna have to go home and look at my my
know.
prenatal. Okay,
It's
so
so many of them. It's crazy to me. Why? And still, even a lot of conventional practitioners, OBGYNs and different medical doctors will recommend folic acid. And if you look at the research, we don't need that. Don't do it.
okay,
Don't take it.
okay, okay,
Yeah.
so good to know. Okay, so folate being the first
Yep.
one. Okay,
Yep.
what are some other
So
supplements you would
yes.
say? Or
So
not supplements, nutrients.
yes, omega-3 fatty acids. This is another one. So this is what you're going to find in fish or fish oil, and this is going to reduce inflammation. Inflammation is at the root of every illness and disease, including fertility issues. So if you can lower inflammation in the body, you're going to be one step closer to optimal health and fertility. It also improves egg quality, and it's just a really good habit to get into, either eating fish 2 to 3 times a week. And we want to have, I have an acronym called SMASH. This is going to be the fattiest fish and the lowest mercury content. So that is salmon, anchovy, mackerel, sardines, and herring. Those are the 5 fish that I recommend that are going to be the best. Now, yes, you can add a little tuna in there, but tuna is a larger fish. It can have some mercury in it, so I wouldn't go crazy with tuna. But it is a low calorie food. It has some good fatty acids in it, so you can have a little bit of tuna if you like tuna. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. And so I'm so glad. We just had salmon for dinner last night. So
Yeah.
that's wonderful. In order to get my daughter to eat salmon though, I have to call it pink chicken. So
There you
that,
go.
that is whatever way we can get it in her body, right?
Exactly. Exactly. I love
Okay, so
that.
you're talking a lot about inflammation. I want you to dive into that as well because I feel like that's something that we are understanding a lot more about. Um, and so when you talk about inflammation, I'm a very visual learner. So can you explain what inflammation in our bodies actually like looks like? Where is there a place that it's worse to have it than others, if that makes sense? Kind of go over inflammation.
Yeah, so inflammation means that your body is actually on fire. Think of it, it is inflamed. So it's similar to if you were to cut your finger and it becomes red and like puffy and hurts a little bit. That's an acute inflammatory response to an injury to the finger. But if you think about internal inflammation, we have all these things coming into our body from toxins and stress and inflammatory foods. That's going to cause an internal chronic inflammation in the body where your cells are just they're on fire. They've been triggered by all of these things that I just mentioned, and they're just inflamed. And so and it can be anywhere in the body. Usually if you have inflammation, it's systemic, unless you have something like an injury. Say you injure your leg at the gym, then that part of your body where the immune system is going is going to be super inflamed because it's fighting off that injury. But most people will have like a low level of inflammation. Now, things that trigger it and aggravate it are the things that I just mentioned. If you have a very inflammatory diet, you're eating a lot of sugar and processed foods and caffeine and alcohol and hydrogenated oils, all these things are going to aggravate that. Also, if you live a high stress life, physically, like you're working out too hard, you're not eating enough calories, or mentally and emotionally, you have a hard job, a hard work life, home life, all of these things are going to inflame the body. The other piece of inflammation is that anytime you have these triggers, the toxins and the inflammatory events, that's going to cause your body to have something called oxidative stress, which is going to deteriorate. Think of it as like what am I trying to say? Like advanced aging. When the body's oxidatively stressed, then it's killing things like eggs and sperm, it's killing your gut health, your immune system, all of these things are being triggered. So we want to do as much as we can to lower inflammation in the body, from good whole foods to stress management techniques to proper sleep, proper water. All of the foundational pieces that we should be doing will lower inflammation. So I know that was a long answer to what you just
No,
asked, but
that's
the bottom
great.
line is if you're inflamed, you're on fire, and we need to put that fire out.
Okay. Is there a specific place, like in women especially, is there a specific place that that inflammation normally occurs, or is it just kind of all throughout the body? Like kind of, I'm trying to visualize what this actually looks like, you know?
It depends on the trigger. So if the trigger is foods, then the gut might be inflamed, and then when the
Okay.
gut is inflamed, it causes something called leaky gut or gut permeability, where the lining of the gut gets stretched and food from that gut goes into the bloodstream, and that's triggering the immune system to put the body on fire. Does that make sense? So it's
Yes.
really like an immune system response to a trigger. Or say, there's inflammation in the reproductive system because somebody has something like endometriosis or a fibroid
Mm.
or a polyp, or there's a trigger in the reproductive tract that's causing this inflammation. But is there any test to say, oh, well, there is tests to say, is the gut inflamed? Is this or that? But
Sure.
usually you're not going to be able to pinpoint unless you see like that trigger, that symptom popping up. And then you can say, okay, this might be from that. Yeah.
Okay. And then overall, does it, I mean, obviously we want to be making sure our diet is an anti-inflammatory diet. Now, does that affect the whole inflammation in the whole body, or is there specific things that it triggers? Go into that a
That's
little bit.
gonna affect the entire body. So if you
Okay.
can lower inflammation through those pieces I said earlier, that's gonna lower it in the whole body. Mhm.
Okay, good to know. So then you also talked about, okay, so high sugars being one of those inflammatory foods. You also said processed food. And when I think processed food, I think chemicals. So is there a specific chemical or chemicals in processed food that you would recommend stay away? Because I mean, especially in our day and age in the United States of America, it is really hard to completely take away all processed foods. So if that's what you recommend, then great. Give us some tips on how to do that. But if we are introducing some processed foods into our diet, are there certain chemicals that we should be looking for that's just like no go, don't even go there?
Yes, the first thing I would say, and this is getting a lot of play lately, and really look at this, but it is food dyes. Artificial
Mm,
food dyes are one of the worst things that you can consume, and it's in everything.
yeah.
Any colored food, like even sports drinks have them, obviously baked goods, but if something is not a natural color, then try to avoid it. And also get in the habit of reading labels and looking to see if it has those colors, because I've even found it in like white foods. I'm like, why is there a color in a white food? It's to make it super white so it looks pretty on the
Yeah.
shelf. And
Right.
that's the thing too with the food dyes. They don't taste like anything. So it doesn't change the flavor. It only changes the appearance of the food and makes the consumer want to buy it, because it's like, ooh, look at that pretty red cupcake, or look at that, super white mashed potato on that box. Like, it
Right.
doesn't do anything to the food. So that's the first thing I would say. Avoid food dyes as much as I would say 100%, but
Okay.
obviously if that's not possible, as much as possible, avoid those food dyes. So that's the
Okay.
first thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you have
So,
something
no,
else?
I'm just thinking, okay, with food dyes, because I've seen like red 40 and like like the color and then the number, right? So are those specific food dyes you're talking about? Or I know that they're trying to bring out some more like quote unquote natural food dyes that like I've heard of using beets in order to make something look red. Like, is that okay? I would assume that that's
Yeah.
okay, but okay,
So food dyes that I'm speaking of are artificial food
got
dyes,
it.
not if they use turmeric to make something orange or if they use beets to make something red. No, that's perfect. That's what we want. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's
Gotcha.
the
Gotcha.
first. Yeah, it's food dyes. The second I would say is hydrogenated oils. Hydrogenated oils are another one that is highly inflammatory. It's a processed oil, and when it's heated, they use it to make foods shelf stable, but in the body, it's highly inflammatory. It puts you in that fire state that I talked about earlier. So this would be things like vegetable oil, canola oil, even things like rapeseed and rapeseed oil, highly inflammatory. What we want to be using as far as oils go, obviously, if you're eating whole foods, you want to eat things like olive oil for cold foods, coconut oil and avocado oil for hot foods. But if you're eating something from a package, even look to see, okay, say, not that I'm advising you to eat potato chips, but if you are like, I've got to have a potato chip right now, I want potato chips, like make that 10% of your fun foods and have potato chips with, say, they're frying in avocado oil or coconut oil, something that's not hydrogenated, because those oils are meant to withstand heat, whereas the hydrogenated oils, they go rancid at high temperatures and they're highly processed. So they have no nutrients whatsoever. So try to,
Okay.
yeah.
So you said olive oil for cold foods, but not hot. Is there an issue with olive oil being heated?
Yes. And I know this one is a little controversial because all of the chefs do it. And I'm like,
What?
no. So olive oil is a low heat point oil. When you heat it, it turns rancid and it's highly inflammatory. So do not cook with olive oil. Olive oil is for salads and cold foods only.
Oh
Yes.
my
So we
word.
want to switch to a high cook point oil. That means when you heat it, it doesn't turn rancid and inflame the body. So that would be things like avocado oil, coconut oil, or even something like ghee, which is a clarified butter, and it can stand a high heat points. Mhm.
Wow.
So,
I had
I
no
know
idea.
Gordon Ramsay cooks with olive oil, and I'm like, stop it, please stop.
I cook with I cook with olive oil all the time. And I thought I was being healthy.
Uh,
Oh my gosh.
uh, yeah,
Okay. So avocado oil and you said
coconut
coconut
oil.
oil.
Yep.
Okay. Can you think of any other ones that, because I know coconut oil has quite a taste to it. So
Yeah.
it might, yeah. Are there any others or are those the main two?
Those are the main two. Yeah, and avocado oil
Okay.
actually has no flavor. It tastes exactly like olive oil to
Oh,
me. Yeah. So
okay.
yeah,
Good to
it's a
know.
great like direct swap. Mhm.
So good to know. Okay, man, I've got after this
Yeah.
episode, I'm gonna be looking through my pantry.
No more food dyes. No more olive oil.
Yes. Well, and I think you were right in saying, especially food dyes, like that's really all the rage. Well, knowing about them more is all the rage right now of knowing how damaging they can be to our bodies. Okay, so good. Now, you also mentioned earlier, you mentioned egg quality. So you mentioned inflammation, but then you also mentioned egg quality, and that is something I really don't know a whole lot about. So can you just go into the importance of egg quality, how to make sure that your eggs are as healthy as they can be with nutrition?
Yes, so we could do a whole show on egg quality, and I've actually done a lot of master classes around this. But most people, if you are not getting pregnant over 35 and or if you're having miscarriages, even just one, it can come back to an egg quality issue. Now, quantity also can come into play depending on your age. If you're over 35, we do have to take that into consideration with the quantity. You're only born with a certain number of eggs, but you
Right.
also, new research is showing that you have dormant follicles that might house eggs that you can kind of wake up. So the quantity can improve. That's why we see AMH numbers improving in women over 35. But we do have to take that in consideration when we're looking at somebody that's over 35 is the quantity. But the quality is something that can be improved by good nutrition and obviously lifestyle. And so the first thing we would do for that is the foundations, high quality whole foods, just like what I'm talking about. It not only is going to help your inflammation, it's also going to help your eggs and your partner's sperm. Obviously, we want him on good, high quality nutrition as well. And then the same applies, getting in a lot of these nutrients from folates and fish oils. And we'll talk about some others in a second. But just instead of I always tell people when you're trying to get pregnant for fertility, especially if you're working on eggs, you're taking your nutrition up a notch and you're really focusing on these nutrients specifically for fertility and egg quality. So yeah. And then, we want to work on all the other lifestyle pieces too, making sure you're managing stress, you're getting enough sleep, enough water. Environmental toxins is one we haven't really touched on yet. I know this is on nutrition, but environmental toxins
That's
are a big one
important too.
with eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so go into that. Environmental.
yeah,
I know there's like xenoestrogens out there. Like tell us all about that. Yeah.
yeah. So it's not as, we want to focus on what we're eating, but we also want to be mindful of what's going on and around our body. So the beauty products, the cleaning products, the, the fragrances and all of those things should be non-toxic. And I know some people get very overwhelmed when they start learning about this, because when you do, you start looking at your home and what you're using, and it's like, everything is toxic. How am I ever going to live without these products? But I always tell people, take it slow. Start as you run out of something. If you don't want to go cold turkey, I do have people that say, like, once I learn this, I'm throwing everything out. Like, I'm getting rid of all of it. But I know that can be expensive. So just as you run out of things, start to replace with non-toxic items. There is a lot of resources now to help you with that. So there's an app called Think Dirty, which is that's produced by EWG, which is the nonprofit group from the government. It's the Environmental Working Group. They're the same people that put out the Dirty Dozen list for organic foods. But their app is called Think Dirty, and you just go to the app. It's free on iOS or Android. Download it, and you can scan your products, and it'll tell you this is toxic, this is not. If it's toxic, it gives you an alternative and says, like, this is something that's comparable, that's a non-toxic item.
That is so good to know. And is that for food and for like cleaning products and makeup?
Just products. Yep.
Oh,
So
just products.
Yep, it's just products. Yeah. So cleaning products, beauty products, that sort of thing.
Got it.
So that's really the first thing, looking at the products that you're using. But then also I would look at the plastics in your environment. Plastic is another big toxin that is terrible for the endocrine system. It kind of goes into your body if it's in our cooking or our Tupperware or cooking stuff. So I would really take a hard inventory of your kitchen and see, am I using Tupperware? Do I have, plastic containers throughout my kitchen, drinking cups and bowls and all the things? I would just purge the plastic, get rid of it. Go to glass, go to stainless steel. Yes, it's going to take you a little bit because it is an investment. Glass and stainless is more expensive, but it's so worth it not to have that stuff in your body.
Yeah. Even if it's, I know the BPA free plastics, but even if it's not, okay.
So BPA free is really more of a marketing ploy, because when they take out the BPA, they replace it with like BPB, BPC. There's other plastics that are just as harmful, but it's just marketing. Yeah. So I would say avoid plastic, especially like a water bottle or anything that you heat. You don't want to put that in plastic, because plastic melts in the heat and it's going to go into your food. Same with your water bottle. Like if you're always have a plastic water bottle and it's in your hot car and it's at the hot gym, that plastic is going into that water.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. But stainless steel, you said, is okay. Yes. Glass is okay.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Now going back really quick to egg quality, one of the questions that I thought of was, when you say egg quality, what exactly does that mean? Does it mean that the eggs are more easily fertilized, or like what changes with egg quality when they become healthier?
Yeah, so they're more easily fertilized. They are stronger. They are going to be more or less likely to either not get fertilized, or if they do get fertilized, to not implant or to have a miscarriage. They're just like a healthier, more robust cellular material, if you will.
Okay.
So, yeah, they're less volatile, so they're going to survive in the body a lot better. Yeah, just think like strong, healthy, like robust, like really, easy to fertilize, easy to implant, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And so earlier too, you mentioned nutrients, being folate being a really important one rather than folic acid. You mentioned fish oil or the omega-3s. What others do you recommend to include in your diet?
So vitamin D in the food variety is really important. Obviously, vitamin D from the sun. Vitamin D is more of a hormone, but it's also in our foods. And so we want both. And so this is going to help with, again, inflammation, hormone regulation, even making sure that we have strong ovulation. Vitamin D is used for ovulation. So, and that comes back to the strength of the egg and the body's ability to ovulate it. So again, we want it in our sunlight. So I recommend 30 minutes a day of non-protected sun exposure. You can do that in the morning. That's even better. It's kind of two birds, one stone. Go outside, stand in the grass or the sand, wherever you live, get some sun in your eyes. You're getting vitamin D, but you're also synthesizing your sleep-wake cycle. And
Mm.
then also get it in food. So it's going to be in things like eggs, poultry, fortified dairy even can have a little bit in there. So mushrooms are another really good like vegetarian option. So just I would have some food with vitamin D in it at least once a day. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good to know. And then also talking about just foods and with those nutrients in it. You said beef, and that that brought another question to mind. Is there's a whole thing about like grass-fed beef or just meat in general, grass-fed or organic. Can you go into that a little bit and explain, is there an importance in getting those highly more natural, like quote unquote natural meats and things like that?
Yes, because meats can be highly fed things like antibiotics. The crops can be sprayed with pesticides and herbicides. Even like antibiotics are used sometimes in meat that's commercially raised. So I recommend if you're going to, I do recommend meat. So I definitely say do eat meat. I
Okay.
wouldn't have a carnivore diet where you only eat meat. So
Mm,
we want variety and we want moderation. But when you're choosing meat, I would choose organic at the minimum. But also, if you can get something like, a really high quality grass fed, no antibiotics used, no herbicides or pesticides used on the feed for the cows or the beef. So just the cleanest variety that you can get is what's going to be most important. I recommend if you have access to this, find a butcher in your area. We go to a
okay.
local butcher that has a local farm. We buy all our beef from there and our seafood that they fly in that's like wild caught. If you have access to that, that's going to be best because one, you're supporting local business, and two, you're getting like high quality, table to farm meats. If you don't have access to that, try to find the best option available at your local grocery store, getting the things that I just said.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And if we're not getting those organic or grass-fed or no antibiotic meats and foods for that matter, without the pesticides and everything, does that cause more inflammatory, like does that cause inflammation, which I'm sure it does? And what risks do we have when we eat vegetables and meats, and even when we're trying to eat whole foods, but we're not getting the right kind of whole foods? Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so you're getting all of the stuff I just said. You're getting toxins, you're getting antibiotics and hormones that the cows were given that's going to impact your gut health, your hormone balance, your immune system, if you're inflamed or not. So really it's just think everything they gave that cow or that, pig, they're giving that to you. So
Mm.
I say avoid it as much as possible. You do not want that. And it might be a little bit more expensive on the front end, but then I would say if you're like, well, I can't afford this high quality meat, well, then just eat it less often, have it once a week or once every other week, and then substitute that in between with some chicken or some pork or something else that's obviously also organic and grass fed,
Right.
but those meats are a little bit less expensive than like a steak or a hamburger or something like that.
Okay.
So I would say don't ever get conventional meat that's not organic or grass fed. Yeah, it's just
Okay.
not the ramifications of it, what it's going to do to your health. Mhm.
Gotcha. Oh, that's so interesting. I actually just listened to another podcast recently about this exact topic, and they were saying that in England, the the feed that they give their animals, if it has, I think they were talking about mold, and if it has too much mold in it, they can't even give it to their animals, but they sell it to the United States, and then we give it to our people.
Uh-huh.
So things
Uh-huh.
that aren't even good enough for in England for their animals are apparently good enough for us in the United States, which is just mind blowing. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
same with food dyes. Food dyes are illegal in Europe, but not
Yes.
in US. So a company will have a product, like say, I can't even think, like Doritos. Like the Doritos in Europe do not have food dyes. The Doritos here do. So it's like, if you're making
Oh
it for
my
Europe,
gosh.
why can't you make it for us?
Right?
So crazy.
Oh
But
my
it comes down to
word.
cost. It's all about cost and the bottom
Yes.
line. They don't make as much profit in Europe because of that. So now they have to make up that profit in the US. And we don't have the laws
Oh,
that Europeans do or that Europe does. So yeah,
interesting.
crazy. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh, that is insane. Oh my word. I'm learning so much more about this now. I definitely I think the cost issue is, at least personally, my biggest holdup, because especially when we're talking about meats. I mean, I feed my family meat every day, and it does become costly even for chicken. Even getting that organic chicken is costly. So, but I think learning more about the health ramifications of it, I'm getting more and more motivated and inspired to make that investment for sure.
Sure. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
other piece of it we didn't even touch on is that meat that doesn't have all the junk in it, it tastes so much better. It's like
Yeah.
and the flavor is so much cleaner, and it just you feel so much better when you eat it, and you don't feel sluggish and run down, and your immune system's not on high alert. So I always think like I might have to spend a little bit more money, but it's just the experience is gonna be better, and then I know it's not jeopardizing my health.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Now, another question too about organic. There are organic processed foods. So touch a little bit on that. I'm literally thinking right now, my kids, sometimes when I need something quick and easy, we do an Annie's organic mac and cheese. And
Yeah.
it's still got the powder. I mean, the cheese powder, I know it's not great, but is
Right.
that actually any better than the regular Kraft mac and cheese? Like, or is it just it's still processed, so you probably just shouldn't eat it anyways?
Yeah, I mean, you have to do the best you can do, especially with kids. Like if they want, my kids love mac and cheese, so I'll get the healthiest version of that I can get. Sometimes we also do Annie's. And so obviously if they're going to choose a different food, if you can say like, we're not going to do mac and cheese and they're okay with that, then obviously do that. But you have to get the best of whatever you can choose. So Kraft again is going to have food dyes in it. It's going to
Right.
be highly processed, non-organic, so it has pesticides as well. So yes, I would say get the organic whenever possible. That just means that those crops, like that wheat that they used to make the pasta, was not sprayed with pesticides. And
Okay.
so they have to go through a pretty rigorous like regulatory body to get that label as organic. And so I would say yes, go ahead and do that. And I find too that even though it is a little more expensive, now more than ever, it's not as expensive as it used to be. Like I feel like even 5 years ago, organic foods were like unattainable for the majority
Right.
of the population. But now it's just like, it might be 50 cents more, maybe $1 more, but
Yeah.
it's so worth it in the end. Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Mhm.
good to know. Now,
Yeah.
kind of changing gears here, talking about specific diets for different reproductive issues. So, in my own story, I was diagnosed with PCOS, and a lot of what the doctors were telling me is, okay, low sugars, low carbs, keto if you can. Are there any specific dietary changes that women can make based on if they have been diagnosed with some sort of reproductive issues? So, whether that be PCOS, endometriosis, etc.
Yeah, so the bottom line doesn't change. The foundations still are the same. We want whole food, balanced nutrition with a lot of different variety. But you can add in a little bit of nuances if they do, if you have PCOS like yourself or endo. For PCOS, I focus on a low glycemic diet, what you just said, like low
Okay.
sugars, low carbs. I don't recommend keto because I don't feel you
Okay.
should ever eliminate a food group. Keto, true keto means you eat very low carb. You don't eat a
Okay.
lot of vegetables. Whereas I like to do something called keto green, which was Dr. Annika Becca's she put out a cookbook about it, but it means that you're doing like lower carb, but you're still having lots of good variety of vegetables. And the meats. But again, that's a whole food diet. So, I would recommend that low glycemic whole foods for PCOS. Similar for endometriosis, we want to work on inflammation because a lot of times people with endo are highly inflamed, and that what kind of triggers endo to, they have all the pain associated with it. There's even talks that endo could be from toxin exposure or even trauma exposure. So low inflammatory diet, again, whole foods is the foundation, but being very careful with things like sugar and all the things I mentioned earlier, hydrogenated oils, alcohol, caffeine, processed foods. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
How easily is inflammation reversed?
yeah, so it's pretty quick. Think about it as like, well, let me take that back. So it depends on how long you've been inflamed. If you've been
Okay.
eating sugars and processed foods your entire life, You're probably not going to be in, lower inflammation in a weekend, but as you adopt this lifestyle, and that's another thing I always tell my patients and clients, this is a lifestyle change. You're not going to go back to eating how you were before once you start to
Right.
introduce this. Even though we're working on fertility, we're working on, we want you healthy for life. So this is your new lifestyle. We're eating whole foods. So as you do that, depending on how long you were in your previous lifestyle, will depend on how long it'll take to kind of lower that inflammation. But most people, within about 30 days, you start feeling better, like 30 days max. I would say,
Okay.
in the first week of people working with me and they've removed processed foods, they start to, their joints aren't hurting as much. They don't feel as tired and lethargic throughout the day. Their skin starts to clear up, their hair looks better, their energy improves, all the things. So it can be
Yeah.
really quick, but you're not going to stop. I wouldn't say like, only do that for 2 weeks and then go back to the
Sure.
processed foods. Like, you want to keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Was there anything else that was on the top of your head that you wanted to touch on or include?
Yeah, so we can talk about, we were just talking about conditions and specific diets. So if you have thyroid condition or thyroid disorder, like hypothyroid, hyperthyroid, Hashimoto's, one of those autoimmune conditions around thyroid, again, whole food balanced nutrition, but also making sure you're adding specific nutrients for the thyroid. So that would be things like selenium, iodine, zinc, fatty acids. Again, the fish, the omega-3s are really good. So I would say if you have a thyroid condition or you think you do, kind of add those nutrients on top of the whole food balanced nutrition that you're already doing. Mhm.
Okay. And then can we go so far as to say that nutrition can actually heal those reproductive or either reproductive issues or thyroid or whatever, or is there often more steps that need to be taken?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on how severe the condition is. Like if you have stage 4 endometriosis, I can't say that nutrition alone is going to
Right.
heal that, but it's a really good first step and it's not
It
going to
can't hurt.
hurt that.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yes, I've seen so many times in my practice, people come to me and they have PCOS or they have a thyroid condition or they have, some other hormonal imbalance where we really dive in deep and fix their diets and they're going into remission. They're getting pregnant with PCOS when their conventional doctor said they couldn't. They're having less painful cycles if they have endo, so definitely I've seen really major reversal of symptoms and even putting themselves into remission based on their diet changes. Yeah.
Wow.
And lifestyle, lifestyle and diet goes hand in hand.
Sure,
Mhm.
sure. And that's kind of what happened with me too. I mean, I was
Mhm.
diagnosed with PCOS and I technically do still have it, but I before I had my first child, I made a major shift in my diet. And I will say that that is what allowed me to get pregnant. I mean,
Sure,
it's so important. That's why I'm so interested in this topic.
sure.
Okay, well, last question for you because I know we're hitting our time, but I wanted to just talk quickly about supplements because we're talking so much about nutrition. Now, so supplements, vitamins that we take in a pill form, how necessary are those if we do have a good whole foods diet? And then if they are necessary, which ones do you recommend taking?
Sure. So supplements I find are very important, but they are what they are called, which is supplements. They don't take the place of a good, clean, whole foods diet. So I always tell people don't waste your money on supplements if you're eating, crappy foods, McDonald's every day. You're eating a lot
Yeah.
of sugar and processed foods. Let's fix that first before you spend money on supplements. But once you start to work on that, if you're just beginning, I would give yourself, say, 30 days to kind of implement these changes and then look at doing supplements. If you already have a really clean diet and you're looking to fill in some gaps, I do think most people can benefit from a handful of supplements that are, I call foundational supplements. And so that would be a good whole food prenatal or multivitamin, depending on if you're trying to get pregnant or not. And so this is going to just fill in the gaps of the diet. Even if your diet is perfect, which I don't think anybody has a perfect diet, but even if you're like, well, I eat super clean, I don't eat processed foods, I eat, what I think is a perfect diet, because of the quantity of foods that you would need to eat and the quality of our food supply, even if you're eating organic foods, you still need to fill in gaps with a really clean prenatal or whole or multi. It's just the state of the state of our food supply. So I
Okay.
would say definitely high quality. Don't go, and this could be a whole show in itself, but I don't recommend going to like, your local pharmacy or grocery store to get a multivitamin or a prenatal.
Mm,
You really want to look at getting a high quality one. Some of the ones that I like, Needed makes a really good variety. We Natal makes one that's for him and her. There's a company called Belly. Those are probably my top three favorites. Just because the quality and the reputation of the company, the creators, all of those things. They do third-party testing and make sure there's not heavy metals and lead and all the things. So that's the first thing, is the prenatal.
okay. What are some others?
Yes. So again, I would say the fish oil. If you're not doing fish 2 to 3 times a week, you need to take a fish oil supplement. This is going to give you your omega-3 fatty acids. Again, that's going to help with inflammation, your egg quality, really balancing hormones in general. So that's one where if you eat fish 2 to 3 times a week, you can skip that one. If you don't, then I would add that.
Okay.
Vitamin D is another one. If you're getting a good amount of sun exposure and you're eating your vitamin D foods, you might be able to skip this one. But I've noticed this a lot, especially now more than ever. We just are chronically low in vitamin D, like everybody, even if you do those things. So vitamin D is an easy one just to throw in there. If your prenatal has it, we want at least 2,000 IUs. But, I say go all the way up to like 5,000 if it's winter months or you're not outside a lot, just to make sure that you have enough vitamin D on board to do the things in the body that it needs to do, especially for fertility. So that's probably the third one. Then I also recommend pre and probiotics. This is one where if you can invest in some gut testing, that's going to be the best case, because you'll see exactly which variety of probiotics you need. If you can't invest in that, then I would just get a good spore-based probiotic that's kind of more general but medical grade probiotic. If it's not spore-based, it's not going to make it through your stomach acid and it's going to die, and that bacteria is not going to do what it needs to do. So prebiotic is going to be the fiber that feeds the probiotic bacteria. So getting a good prebiotic is also important. Unless you eat a lot of fiber and you get a lot of good varieties of fiber, sometimes you can skip the prebiotic, but most people don't. I recommend 30 grams of fiber per day. Most people are not getting that. So
Yeah.
just throw a prebiotic on there, in there just in case.
Okay. Is there a possibility of overdosing on supplements, or kind of go into that? Like, is there a risk to taking too many or too much of one supplement?
Yeah, I would take it based on the manufacturer's recommended dosing, or if you're working with a practitioner, then I would take it based, like I will put it together a supplement protocol based on what I see on lab testing and in their health history forms. So you can't really overdose, but I would be careful with taking so many different ones, because you just don't know what's going to counteract with what. And so I see people that are taking like 20 or 30 things because they read it on Facebook. Be really careful doing that, because you can't overdose. Like, you're not going to die from that, but you can cause a lot of imbalances just based on things counteracting with each other.
And
Mhm.
how would you notice that? Would you not have a lot of energy? Like, are there certain signs to look for? Because I actually am, some of my clients that are really trying to get pregnant, they're on 30 supplements, and I'm just wondering, like, how useful is that actually?
Yeah, so I would look at, one, do they have any symptoms? Do they have, like you said, it can be anything from low energy to cycle dysregulation to heavier periods to headaches to, any symptom that you have. I would look and say, okay, is this from these supplements that I'm taking? Because you can take too many. And I would say if they're taking 20 or 30 things, a lot of it probably overlaps with each other. Like, I'll see people taking like DIM and NAC and what's another one? I can't think, but like those two do the same thing. Like, they both
Yeah,
kind of balance estrogen and detox estrogen. So we don't want both of those. Or I'll
sure.
see somebody that has a really good prenatal, but then they'll also be taking vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin D, and all of those are in the prenatal. So we don't need to double up. You're already taking it. So,
Yeah.
and the body will get rid of what it doesn't need. So a lot of times too, if it's a water soluble vitamin, you're just going to pee it out. You're not using it. So like vitamin C is water soluble. If you've got it in the prenatal and you've got it by itself, you're just peeing out the excess. So you're really just wasting your money.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. All right. Well, nearing the end, I know you do have a free gift for the audience as well,
Yes.
which I'm super excited about. So go into that, and all the information will be in the show notes as well.
Sure. So my free gift is our Optimizing AMH and Egg Health Guidebook, where we go through just tips and strategies for optimizing those things so that you can get pregnant. Plus, there's a little mini meal plan in there specifically written for foods that increase AMH and egg quality. So, and you'll put that link in the show notes, but just for people listening, it's hormonepuzzlesociety.com/egg-health-guide.
Okay. And real quick, what is AMH?
So that's anti-Müllerian hormone. This
Okay.
is the hormone that is in the follicles of the eggs that can show egg quantity. So whenever we have our AMH tested through blood, depending on the number, we want to have it at least over 1. If it's less than 1, then that means you have diminished egg quantity, and we need to work towards improving that. So, and I see that a lot in now more than ever in younger and younger people. That so if you're under 35 and you have low AMH, we need to ask the question why, because that's not normal. You should not have low AMH under 35. If you're over 35, even like 35 to 40, you still should have a good variety of AMH. If you don't, then we need to dig into that and find out why. Over 40, we can still make improvements, but that's more common to have because AMH lowers with age as you head towards menopause.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Dr. Kela, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I learned so much, and I'm going to go throw out my olive oil now.
Right.
Or just put it on my salads. I'll put it on my salad.
Right. Yeah, I know. My husband, I was like, I need to buy a shirt that says, I promise I'm fun, because I'll always be like, don't eat that. Oh, that's bad. Oh, that has food dyes.
Yes, yeah. But I'm just becoming so much more and more
Yeah,
convicted about this, and
sure.
and there's a lot of like I want to be. I still want to have a knowledge, right? I don't just want to throw everything out just
Yeah.
because someone told me to. Like, I want to investigate the reasons why, and you did a great job of ironing that out, explaining why with all these foods, and I'm just really grateful for your time here today. So thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you too, Haley. This was really fun.
Also, to Dr. Kayla, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, like where can they find you?
Sure. So the best place is on our website, and that's hormonepuzzlesociety.com. There we have some free gifts. We have a fertility meal plan, a hormone guide. So go there and check that out. You can also book a call with me right on the first page if you want to talk to me further about your specific case and how I can help you. I am also on social media, so we love to hang out on Instagram. So that handle is Kayla_health coach and hormone puzzle method. And we have a new Instagram for our fertility coach certification program that we just launched the Instagram. The program's been running since 2018. So our new Instagram is Become a Fertility Coach. So go there to learn all about becoming a fertility coach and our certification program. And last thing, my podcast, Hormone Puzzle Podcast, everywhere podcasts are heard.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank
All right.
you.
Good
Bye,
talking
y'all.
to you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Truth and Fertility podcast. If you are enjoying this content, it would be amazing if you could leave a 5-star review. That helps me tremendously to be able to continue to produce these episodes for you. Remember that these podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon, and YouTube. And you can always go to my website, truthandfertility.com, to learn more. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week.